Jetzt Batman, sie gekommen zu fahren, spezieller Gast, der geht reden, Batman, aber soll sein still. About 10 years ago, on Shmini Atzeres, there was a certain doctor that got a phone call that he should please come to New York. He was thinking, should I come? It's Yontif or what? But if he got a call from 770, he dropped everything, took his package, and he took the next plane, and he came to New York. From that day on, for the last 10 years, he put in days, nights, efforts into bettering the Rebbe's health. The first time he came here for 3 days, he left his family, he left his work, he left his practice, and he stood here for 3 weeks, day and night, on call. After he went back, there is not one day that he is not in touch, how the Rebbe is, how the Rebbetzin is, etc., etc. Baruch Hashem, from 10 years ago till today, we could make a Shechayanu, what he did to help and bring up the Rebbe's health and progress. As the Rebbe said once by a Farbrengen, that mit gedacht ankommen Tage zu the Doktoren. Now, I want you to please give your undivided attention to Dr. Ira Weiss from Chicago, who deserves a tremendous ovation.
Revered Rabbonim, honored guests, and dear friends, a good Chodesh Kislev to everyone. This is for sure a month for singing Dida Notzach as we celebrate many joyous events, including what appears to be the finality of a court decision upholding the rightful claim of the Lubavitcher Rebbe Shlita regarding the rare and precious books and manuscripts that belong to our Lubavitch community, as well as are celebrating a decade of great accomplishment by the Lubavitcher Rebbe Shlita. In addition, his brother-in-law, Rabbi Shmaryahu Garari, is celebrating today on Rosh Chodesh Kislev his 90th birthday. It is no random coincidence that these events intersect in their timing with a holiday that celebrates and commemorates our victory over assimilation forces that sought to adjust and modernize the unchanging laws and practice of our Torah. Certainly, the Lubavitcher Rebbe Shlita and his brother-in-law, Rabbi Shmaryahu Garari, have been present-day heroes in maintaining a clear stand on the permanence and timelessness of our Torah. They are like candles burning long and bright to illuminate the world with oil that does not have the Greek touch. I'm very happy to say Shehechayonu with all of you over these 10 years that I have been a close friend of the entire Lubavitch community. Actually, my roots go back much farther with Lubavitch because I had the great blessing and zechus of having been the Talmud Torah student of my dear Rabbi Herschel Schusterman from Chicago, who to me was as like a father. My other Lubavitch connection prior to my assignment here in New York was with my dear Rabbi Herschel Fogelman from Worcester, Massachusetts, whom I met at the time when I became engaged to a young lady from Worcester. And Rabbi Fogelman married us at the Lubavitcher Yeshiva in Worcester 14 years ago. And it has been a most joyous liaison with his dear family. I remember very well the beginning of this assignment in New York, because it was a very difficult moment for the Rebbe and for the whole community when he became sick on the Yom Tov. Rabbi Yehudel Krinsky gave me the phone call. We answered the phone on Yom Tov because I have a medical phone, and I was really stunned to be getting a call of this nature. Of course, very sad and shocked. And my dear wife was with me to get this call to help advise me, since I was really flabbergasted. But when we heard how desperate the situation was, and when we heard that there were a lot of doctors here in New York who felt strongly that we should go against the Rebbe's wishes to take him away from 770, where he wanted to stay despite the illness, we got on the phone with a very dear colleague of mine, Dr. Louis Tischholz, who's the chief of cardiology at Mount Sinai Hospital, probably one of the world's greatest cardiologists and one of my teachers at the Harvard Medical School. And although he did not know the Rebbe at all, and he did not owe me any favors, it was I who owed him as a great teacher, he literally dropped everything he was doing, including a lecture tour that he had to give in the coming week, to come down to 770 and begin helping to take care of the Rebbe in his illness. And this was while I was trying to get my airline arrangements, and coming to New York involved a delay of about 3 hours. But it was Dr. Tischholz, who himself was really unknown to the community and did not know much about the Rebbe, who took my word to come in and got things organized. Because when I came here, 3 or 4 hours after my call, Dr. Tischholz had already helped to restore the Rebbe to a certain degree of strength, and the Rebbe really was basically in the right slot through Dr. Tischholz's good help. In addition, we had a lot of other help. We had the help of the Hasidim here in New York, who untiredly went up and down the turnpikes and to New Jersey and whatnot to get us the equipment we needed to take care of the Rebbe with the most modern equipment, in fact, much more modern than was available in the hospitals. And I learned very quickly that the Lubavitch method is much faster than the hospital method. For example, you could run a coronary care unit in a hospital, and you might wait 3 or 4 weeks for delivery of equipment. We needed equipment that hour. So men got into their cars, labeled Bestritsky's boys got in with equipment that really would have taken weeks or perhaps months to obtain. And not only was it good equipment, it was better than was available at the time. It happens now in this year, it's now become the standard, but this was 10 years ahead of its time. We had equipment that could monitor the Rebbe without having a lot of wiring. When I personally came in to see the Rebbe in my first encounter, I mentioned to the Rebbe my background with Rabbi Schusterman and with Rabbi Fogelman, and I also told the Rebbe that I was wearing a very special pair of tzitzis that a very dear patient of mine, Mr. Moshe Shevitz, Zichrona Lebracha, had given me. And immediately I was amazed that the Rebbe in his illness could recall Moshe Shevitz in detail and asked me how he was doing, in great detail, reflecting the fact that he knew the intimate details of Moshe Shevitz's life. And in addition, he asked me how his stocks were doing, because Mr. Shevitz had made a pledge in his heart that while he was not a man with a family, he was very careful to invest his money properly for the sake of tzedakah when he would pass on. And the Rebbe was very keenly aware of all the transactions, and I was really stunned. In addition, I told the Rebbe that I was wearing a special knit yarmulke that one of our dear neighbors had made for me years ago. And the Rebbe immediately remembered who this family was. It was the Goldberg family in Chicago. Because of illness in the family, they had trouble having a child. And after many attempts and failures, they finally came to see the Rebbe on the advice of Rabbi Shlomo Hecht, Zichrona Lebracha. And unknowns to this community, they came in when the Rebbe used to have the Yechidus. And the Rebbe gave them a detailed bracha, told them they would have a son and then a daughter. And lo and behold, everything the Rebbe said came true. And the Rebbe had the wherewithal to ask me not only about them from the years before, but what they named the son. And it turned out that this family just pulled out of the hat the name Levi Yitzchak for the son, who's now a very, very fine young man. And in addition, the Rebbe asked, how is the man's parnasa? Which was a very appropriate question, because at that very moment, the man was changing from one commitment to another major commitment to buy an industry, and it couldn't have been a better timed question. Many people think we did brilliantly for the Rebbe because he was sick and we brought him out of the illness and the like, but I must say it's reminiscent of Yosef's reaction when Pharaoh commended him on the interpretation of the dream. Yosef said, it is not anything but God's interpretation of the dream, and he was simply the shaliach to bring the interpretation to Pharaoh. I think that's how the doctors regard their role in this particular case. We had the help of many other fine doctors. Dr. Resnick came from his military station in Hawaii to come and help, and he was with the Rebbe when the Rebbe was released from 770. At this time, 10 years ago, it was Dr. Resnick's decision to let the Rebbe go back home on Rosh Chodesh Kislev. Dr. Bob Feldman, through the years, has been most wonderful in helping take care of the Rebbe and the Rebbitzin on many occasions, and really being tireless in his effort to help us. And I may also want to thank my dear Professor Bernard Laun from the Harvard Medical School, who, on my request, came in from China to help take care of the Rebbe at the time of the acute illness. And Dr. Laun's meeting with the Rebbe led to many wonderful things. Some of you may not know that Dr. Laun is a very important figure in world cardiology, and his liaison with China has been a very strong one. The Rebbe saw one year, when meeting with Dr. Laun before the Yomim Narayim, to give Dr. Laun special instructions on how to blow the shofar, his own personal shofar, and handed Dr. Laun the shofar for his trip to the Great Wall, where one Rosh Hashanah many years ago, Dr. Laun, through the Rebbe's tutelage, blew the shofar in that fourth corner of the world. Many people in Chicago ask me, what do you learn when you come in so many times to New York over 10 years? And I tell them that what you learn is in so many spheres that it's really difficult to give a good answer, but perhaps by a few examples I can amplify the ideas. Even when one travels to 770, one learns. For example, this year at Shmini Atzeres Simchas Torah, I planned my trip as usual, as I have done the last 10 years, but this time I did not have the privilege, as I've had in previous years, of having an easy schedule at my own hospital. I just had too many sick patients. So as opposed to my usual custom, which is to get on an early plane and catch the tail end of Hoshana Rabbah and then make it to the Rebbe's Sukkah for a personal receiving of Lekach, I realized that I would have to take about the last realistic plane in before Yom Tov began. But I did this because I had the commitments to the patients in Chicago. It was a 12:30 plane, a United plane. And Chicago's airports are fraught with hazards and delays, etc. But as I got to the airport this time, not expecting any Lekach, the airplane got right on the runway at 12:31, an unusual feat. The pilot was in the air by 12:32, and shortly thereafter he announces to us that because of an unusual strong tailwind from west to east, we're going to get into Newark Airport 1/2 hour ahead of schedule, which is no mean feat when it's only an 1.5 hour flight. And I said, we got off the ground 20 minutes ahead of schedule. We're getting into Newark a 1/2 hour early, and I suppose, let's see what happens from there. So when I get off the plane, lo and behold, the 1/2 hourly bus that takes you into the Port Authority terminal was making its pickup right at that moment, and I caught the bus just like that and gained another 1/2 hour. So I said, 20 minutes plus 30 minutes plus 30 minutes means I'm about 1.5 hours ahead of schedule. Obviously, I'm going to get the Lekach. Hashem is putting it right in my hands anyway, even though I didn't plan it. When I got to the Port Authority bus terminal, I realized that I forgot some dental equipment. So I went into Walgreens, and it took me a few minutes to buy dental floss, etc. And then I got down to the subway station. I just missed the number 3 train, but they come so often that another one came about 7 minutes later. And I enjoyed the ride in. I was so happy. When I got out of Kingston Station, lo and behold, the Rebbe had just closed the sukkah and had gone back because Yom Tov was approaching. And I was a little disappointed because I said Hashem was putting into my hands the Rebbe's lekach, and somehow or other my dental floss led me astray. I said, I'm not going to shed tears, but I think that we all can learn a great lesson from this, because it really is, I'm telling the story not because it's unusual, because it's a common day experience. When we look philosophically at what goes on around us, we are planted in a generation when there is available a Rebbe who can lead the world in this way and can communicate to the world with the aids of modern technology in an unprecedented and almost imaginary way, to be broadcast by live cable broadcasts throughout the world, to be able to have sichos published quickly and distributed amongst all the people of the world, to have translations of these sichos, that it becomes readily available to us. Hashem puts into our hands in this day and age communications, travel, all the things that should make the observance of Torah and mitzvah all the easier, and influencing our fellow man all the easier. And yet, like myself, we sometimes go off for the dental floss, and we miss the great privilege that Hashem puts in our hands. I think on a trip like that, I learned that one has to make a commitment straight and simple, and if you're given the gifts by Hashem to go for it, then please go for it. Don't go off to the side. When I initially took care of the Rebbe, my wife asked me a personal favor to ask of the Rebbe if I could please ask the Rebbe to help one of our very dear friends who was a brilliant physical chemist in central research at DuPont in Wilmington. He was beginning to suffer the problems of multiple sclerosis. And I asked the Rebbe, I told the Rebbe that I didn't want to ask anything of him in his sickness, but if he could at least give me a good vort on multiple sclerosis. And I had already learned from the Rebbe in the first few weeks of taking care of him that the Rebbe knew a lot of things about medicine. Without any hesitation, the Rebbe asked Rabbi Groner to go right to his files and immediately retrieve an article on multiple sclerosis the Rebbe had recently read. And I looked at it, I didn't quite get what was going on. The article was on multiple sclerosis in relationship to measles. And I put it in my bag and I took note of it, but I really didn't put it all together. It turns out 10 years later that this is the connection between measles and multiple sclerosis, that people who have measles develop antibodies as they would to any virus. And there are a few people who have the unfortunate experience of having an autoimmunologic reaction against parts of their brain, which causes the syndrome of multiple sclerosis, which is a neurologic syndrome. And the Rebbe had the wherewithal to read this article, understand its significance 10 years in advance of what the medical community is now beginning to learn. The Rebbe also told me when I finished my little stay in New York 10 years ago, that if I would be so kind as to take a listen to his wife's heart. His wife, Baruch Hashem, has been in good health, and I agreed. I dutifully went over to the Rebbitzin, took a little listen, and made note of a little interesting finding, which wasn't any big news, but it was a little interesting finding. It was sort of like the way, I think the way that Yaakov took note of his son Yosef's comment about the stars and the moon bowing down, that he took note of this, but he just put it in his mind for future reference. And it turned out that 4 years later, after I left the Rebbe's care, the Rebbitzin reports to me, or someone reports to me, that the Rebbitzin has a rash and a fever. And it suddenly dawns on me, a rash and fever, and that little finding I made when the Rebbe asked me to take a listen to her heart when there was no problem, I immediately came to the conclusion that it was a very serious problem that needed immediate intervention. And because of the Rebbe's foresight on this matter, I came in right away, just on the eve of Shabbos, met with the Rebbe, and met with my friend Dr. Tischholz, and met with some people on the phone across the country to confirm what we were talking about. And the Rebbitzin went on the appropriate medicines to literally save her life in a way that would not have been possible had this diagnosis not been thought of at the beginning. It was just a remarkable call. And that was right from the Rebbe was sick 10 years ago. The Rebbe also referred at the time when he was sick to his suggestions about using genetic engineering to try to improve ways of healing the heart. And as we all know from reading the press, and those of you who follow the stock market, that this is really one of the hottest topics in medicine, the use of genetic engineering 10 years later. The Rebbe had the foresight to understand its significance, even in his illness, even 1 decade ago, before the medical profession was keyed in on such an important area. One of my greatest gifts from the Rebbe, besides the personal advice that he has given me over the years, was 4 years ago when he asked me that he had heard about my second baby's birth when he was sick 10 years ago, and he had not heard any Mazel Tov since then. And he was wondering what was the problem. And I said, I'm still on very good terms with my wife, etc. But there are some times when I just don't make it home. You know, it's a long work day in the hospital. And the Rebbe then took a little bit of a detailed medical history on me and my wife, and he discovered that the next Farbrengen would be poorly timed to come to. And he advised me stay home. And he furthermore said, you shouldn't be too busy around that time of the hospital. And lo and behold, his bracha came through very well. And we have our third little baby girl, Rachel, who we named Rachel Chanef. Rachel after someone dear in our family, and Chana after the Rebbe's mother. But really a great blessing from the Lubavitcher Rebbe. I don't want to take your time with endless stories, but I will just say that many of you have heard some of the details of some of the encounters. They really go on and on. But we all must really be thankful to Hashem for the privilege of having had the Rebbe as our leader and our guide and our mentor and a leader for the world in a most productive 10 years since I had a chance to help take care of him. And really we should all see continued good and joy and success in all of our work, in all of our leanings under the guidance of the Rebbe Shalita. And he should be well and gesund for many, many long and productive years. I thank you all. A triple Yom Tov for the Roshag, for the Rebbe, and for the Didan Notzach.